You might have heard of Auralee recently if you're into fashion, and you might have heard of their legendary quality. But what actually goes into that quality? What makes their stuff so much better than everyone else? In fact, it's not a secret. It's actually in the names of the pieces themselves. When you look at their items, you're confronted with names like Hard Twist Denim 5P Pants, Washed Finx Gabardine Soutien Color Coat. To your average person, this is pretty damn confusing. But these names are actually a glimpse into all the crazy fabric development that Auralee does for all of their items. Remember how in our last video we mentioned that Auralee never uses off-the-shelf fabrics? After watching this, you'll understand why. So let's start with the Hard Twist Denim 5P Pants, otherwise known as just, well, jeans. So the 5P stands for 5 pocket. If you take a look at the vintage Levi jeans, actually it was called waist overalls back then, you can see the same 5 pocket structure, the 2 front pockets, the 2 back pockets, and a single coin pocket on top of the right pocket. Actually, this is the watch pocket, by the way. Oh, whatever, let's move on. So in the item description, it says that Auralee wanted to make a pair of denim that had the same crisp texture as raw denim even after washing. And if you're not aware what raw denim is, it's basically unprocessed denim fabric. What that means is that usually when fabric mills take a yarn and they weave it into a fabric, they'll put a sizing coating on the fabric. And yeah, it's the same word as the SML sizing, but it's a different concept. Usually this is either a synthetic material or some kind of starch. And what this leads to is a very stiff and very crisp fabric that people know and love raw denim for. But usually with raw denim, as soon as you wash it, it softens up. You could just not wash your denim like some denim heads do, but that's kind of disgusting, to be honest. So what Auralee is doing here is they're making a pair of jeans that can be washed and still retain that kind of stiffness, and the way they're doing it is by twisting the yarns. So in order to make a fabric, you have to take raw cotton, which comes in the form of these fluffy balls, and turn them into a yarn first. That process is called spinning. And how you choose to spin a yarn can actually lead to a great variation in how the fabric comes out at the end. If what you're looking for is a very soft fabric, you twist it very lightly, or in some cases not twist it at all. Like what we talked about in the last video was the Auralee baby cashmere sweater. But in other cases, if you want the opposite effect, if you want a fabric that's very stiff to the touch and has a sort of crispness to it, you twist the yarn very hard, and that's what Auralee means here by the hard twist denim. If you take a look at the photos, it sort of looks like raw denim. What they're doing here is they're combining the best parts of raw denim and washed denim. The look of raw denim, but the easy care of washed denim. Alright, moving on to the next item. Washed Finx Gabardine Soutien Color Coat. Well, ain't that a mouthful? I know what you're probably thinking right now. What the hell is a Soutien color? It's okay, relax. It's not your fault that you don't know about it, because this word doesn't actually exist in English or in French, as the naming might suggest. According to Japanese Wikipedia, the word Soutien color was a completely made-up Japanese word. So what a Soutien color coat actually is it's almost like a shirt collar. That's the easiest way of describing it. The official way of referring to this coat is actually called a 𝗵𝗀𝗂𝗁 coat, which you almost never see, well, except for Japanese companies. They probably consulted a dictionary after being told that a Soutien collar wasn't a real word. But really, that's completely fine, because to your average American, everything's a trench coat. This is a trench coat, this is a trench coat, this is a trench coat, but this? No, that's a jacket. As for the Auralee coat, it's actually modeled after the traditional Burberry car coat, which looks like this. And yeah, Soutien color coat, 𝗵𝗀𝗂𝗁 coat, NL car coat. Man, sure is it great to have a million words talking about the same thing. So what gabardine fabric really is that it's a very tightly woven twill weave. If you want to see an example of a twill weave, just look down at the jeans that you're wearing right now, and you'll see these diagonal lines. Here's a picture of the weave structure of a twill weave, and you can see the same diagonal lines. Because of its tightly woven weave structure, gabardine fabric is typically lightly water resistant, which is why it's usually used for outerwear. Alright, going back to the Auralee coat, what is Finx? So we need to talk about cotton, and cotton is a plant, and plants come in different varieties. Think about rice, you have short grain varieties and long grain varieties. Similarly in cotton, and the best cotton varieties are the extra long staple cotton varieties. So just like wine or coffee, the origin of the cotton plays a great part in determining the final quality of the product. And some of the most well-regarded origins for extra long staple cotton are India, the United States, and actually Egypt. And some of these regional cotton varieties are actually branded, much like how Parmigiano Reggiano cheese is branded. It can only come from certain parts of Italy. The US has its own brand of high-quality cotton known as 𝗖𝗵𝗇𝗃. You've probably heard about it before. And Finx cotton is similarly a branded cotton coming from Egypt but weaved in Japan. So this coat is made from this extra long staple Finx cotton. If you're not aware, if you take a very fine fiber, a very high quality fiber, and you weave a fabric out of it, your average American person will probably think it's low quality because it'll feel like either paper or plastic. It'll be very thin, it'll feel kind of flimsy, but that's not the point. That's what a fine fabric is. Because of how fine the fiber is, you can weave it very tightly and you can make it very light. And when it's woven incredibly tightly, it can actually be water resistant without using polyester. Your average American thinks a higher quality fabric is heavier, but that's actually not true, it's the opposite. If you think about a workwear fabric, like Carhartt canvas, for a fabric that thick, you don't need extra long staple cotton, you can get away with something shorter. Alright, so we've explained Finx, we've explained Gabardine, we've explained Soutien color code, and now the last word in this word salad, washed. So typically when you make a fabric very dense, when you weave it very tightly, sometimes it's kind of stiff. If you've ever owned a high quality dress shirt made from very finely woven cotton, sometimes there's a very papery quality to it. So Auralee put this fabric through the wash, similarly to how you put a pair of jeans through the wash, like we talked about before was raw denim, to make it softer. And over here in the images, you can see there's a bit of wrinkle on the fabric. That probably comes from the wash. Alright, now on to our last item, luster plaiting tee. Until now, we've only been talking about woven fabrics, but there is a different category of fabric known as knit fabrics. With a woven, you really have a bunch of these crisscrosses, that's how you make up the fabric. But a knit, you're passing a single yarn through a bunch of loops, like your grandma's hand-knit sweater. What you might actually not know is that a t-shirt is actually a knit. In fact, t-shirts are closer to sweaters than shirts. So within knitwear, there is a technique called plaiting, where on a knitting machine, you use two strands of yarn together. Usually this is done to have two colors, one strand of yarn with one color on the front and the other color on the back. But Auralee's take is a bit different. Instead of using two colors, according to the product description, they're using extra long staple cotton for the face yarn and a soft twisted yarn for the back. So I'm guessing this is why it's called a luster plaiting tee, because when you take a very fine extra long staple cotton fiber and you make a fabric out of that, sometimes you're gonna have this kind of shine to it. But yeah, it will be pretty thin, and some people will think it just looks like polyester. However, in the back, Auralee uses a very lightly twisted yarn. Remember when we talked about previously, for the hard twist, you end up with a very crisp, very dry feeling fabric. Well, against the skin, that might not feel good, so usually if you want something very soft, you twist the yarn very lightly, and that's what Auralee did here. I'm also guessing that the intention here was to add a bit of weight to the fabric, and to get it to drape a bit better. So yeah, we went through some of Auralee's more popular items, and hopefully you can understand how crazy high quality this stuff really is. If there's any other items you'd like me to explain, feel free to drop a comment. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. 𝗵𝗇𝗃 out.